There was no like age mates that I had in my entire school who were black or mixed race. I was hyperactive and all that sort of shit, and then they sent like psychologists to our school and told us that they were monitoring all of us, but they were just essentially watching me. My big goal was, and still partially is, to go to Nigeria and fight corruption. I was obviously one of the first people to be on colors, and when that dropped, it was like, it blew up. This is like the first interview I've ever, been talking about that I was, was depressive as a teenager.
Hi, this is Lauren Engel. Today I'm here with KELVYN COLT.
Sorry. Yeah.
So you're born in southwest Germany?
Yes. I was born in Fulda, a tiny village, and then we moved to Wiesbaden, which is a slightly bigger city, where, funnily enough, Schoolboy Q was born there. J. Cole grew up in the area, Wiz Khalifa, like loads of people, because there's a big military base there.
Yeah.
So loads
like a US.
Loads of people just.
That's how I got a bit of your accent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I'm Nigerian. I'm half Nigerian, half German, but I grew up bilingual, so grew up speaking English and German. And after that, then I moved to London and started living between London and Berlin. My dad actually left the army before we moved to Wiesbaden. It's interesting because Wiesbaden is like a very German city. And then you had sort of like the clash because the Americans were then based there, and the first area we lived in was predominantly, I would say, Turkish. 65183, which is just very like you have loads of Turkish cafes and restaurants there, and like the old owners wouldn't even speak German and sort of stuff. It was very cool. It was very multicultural. So I think this is also like another thing that sparked that desire for me to go abroad. And
what did your mom do?
My mom does office management. She's very, very great at keeping people organized and managing people. So that is what she does. I had a conversation with her the other day about what she wanted to become, and when she was younger, her dream was to become a nutritionist. Yeah, but somehow she ended up in office management. So she said she's very happy that I do something else, that I do something creative.
Where do you think you got your creative side from?
That's a good question, because neither my mom nor my dad do music or like anything crazy creative. I don't know. For me, it was when I was in my teens, and just facing whatever difficulties teenagers go through, teenage emotions. Also the breakup of my parents and have no money, and then again growing up in a multicultural area, but still not feeling like I really belong to a particular group.
Yeah, it was kind of like your identity, right? Because you had like mixed parents. Kind of like me, like my mom's Chinese, my dad's American, so I often ask like mixed race if they ever had like identity issues.
Crisis. I think all of us, our whole generation, because I think on the one hand you have us people who are sort of between two cultures, ethnicities, but it's even for like I have for example white friends or Turkish friends, and their parents would be crazy religious and they're atheists, and that's like living between two cultures. So I think that's a trauma our whole generation to a certain extent is facing. Music was, for me, first I was painting, and then I found a lot of comfort in listening to especially Tupac and Kid Cudi. And then I was like, yo, this is what I want to be doing.
Do you remember who showed you Tupac, or did you find it yourself?
My dad was really big on like listening to hip hop.
He just played like hip hop all in the house.
Well, that, and then like Luther Vandross, and all the old soul and Motown and whatever. But hip hop was a lot of old school hip hop.
Was it just you, or did your friends also listen to that type of music?
A few of my friends, but especially when we got into our like teens, the people started listening more to like EDM music, which was never part of my universe. Yeah, I don't know. I was cool just listening to it on my own, I guess.
But once you started like kind of rapping yourself, it was hard to have like a lot of people in Germany listen to your music, right? Because it was more like Atlanta based, the kind that
exactly. So in the beginning when I started out, nobody like in the area really wanted to work with me, because they were like, this is Germany, so you gotta rap in German and da-da-da and da-da-da. And on the internet, I started connecting with other people in that area who were also, you know, rapping in English or just making beats and were open for working with people like myself. So we formed a group back then in our garage, in the garage of my parents, called BYS, you know, the collective, which stands for Beyond Your Sense, Be Yourself, Be Your Style, whatever you want to interpret into the acronym. And we were our own motor in that sense, our own machine that we started running because no labels wanted to work with us. And we actually had a few people reaching out saying, oh, if you rap in German or if you do like sort of flow rider pitbull music, if you want to rap in English, then we'll sign you, you know, we'll do this, that. I had some guy come up to me, was like, I'm gonna pay for your tattoos and then you should become a tiger double. Like, I had all sorts of crazy, crazy shit. Stuck to what we loved doing, and
How do you describe yourself back then growing up?
It was a mixture because we had some sort of, should I say, like a special agreement with the private school I was going to. So we didn't have to pay the full fee. And so I came from a background which was different to a lot of my friends because a lot of them came from very affluent families. And I really didn't have that money, you know, my family.
Yeah, and the grades.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, there was no like age mates that I had in my entire school who were black or mixed race. There was only, I think, 1 or 2 kids who were like, I don't know, 5 years younger than me or something. So that was, when I was getting older, something that I became more conscious of, you know, more aware of. But I just always tried to blend in, I guess. I was very happy to like sort of the outside world and have my friends I was hanging out with. But the older I became, I think, especially around the age of 16, I really started to feel isolated. And I would try to blend in and fit in, but there was just always something that, you know, where I felt like, okay, something doesn't connect. I don't really feel at home here amongst these people, amongst their interests. Like, they would listen to different music. They would, you know, do other things. They would have more money to go out or this sort of stuff. So I guess if I would describe myself, it would be in my teens, outside smiling, but inside like a sadness.
Did your parents know that?
I mean, yeah, your parents, you know how mothers are. They look at you, they'll always know. I guess to a certain extent. But, you know, I just really focused. I channeled everything into being creative and doing music.
What were your favorite subjects in high school?
Anything where you can talk. As you can tell, I love to talk. I would say like philosophy, ethics, politics. Politics and economics was definitely my favorite subject, and I had a phenomenal teacher. Up until this day, I'm very grateful for having him because he taught us how to, you know, interpret news and data and how to get our own truth out of things and not just accept everything the media and history books put in front of us. He later on got fired for that because he was just always anti-system, but I guess that's why I really love the guy. Like, I learned a lot from him.
And you also really like poetry, right?
Yeah, that's how I started. Really started off. I was writing poems before I moved into rapping.
Was it through school that you started writing poetry on your own, or
how
did you start?
Yeah, I was actually, when I was really young, my dad would sort of try to brag in front of his friends by saying, like, you know, when parents are like, look how smart my son is or my daughter. Yeah, exactly. He's a genius. So you're like, you know, here are 5 words or whatever, 3 words, write a poem. And I just go for it. So that's how I guess I discovered my love for poetry. He taught me in a playful way.
Yeah. And the first time you kind of got your music out there was through, is it called Viva?
Oh yeah, the Viva. Yeah. That was a funny one. Back then we did a cover of the sort of the Harlem Shake, the, you know, the song that was back then by Bawa. And we did sort of like a remix of it, and it ended up in the Viva 18 Black charts, which is like their way of saying urban or hip hop music.
And that was the first time you got more fans, or did you already have a fan base back then?
I had a small fan base, but that song didn't bring the sort of fan base that that I have now, or that I would want to have, just because it was way more commercial.
True.
So, people who get excited over something like that, they're usually, a new trend comes along and they'll get excited about that thing. So that's why after that song we sort of put that project to rest and focused more on, the deeper music.
How old were you when this happened, the Viva?
I was about, I think, 17, 18.
Oh, so you're still in high school.
Yeah, well, just came out of high school, so I was 18 exactly.
Yeah.
I just graduated. Also in Germany, you have to keep in mind, usually you are 19 by the time you graduate, not 18, how it is in most other European countries. But I was still 18 because I jumped a class when I was younger. Because I had like really, really bad, I was hyperactive and all that sort of shit. And then they sent like psychologists to our school and told us that they were monitoring all of us, but they were just essentially watching me. and then they they sent me off to do an IQ test and all sort of that stuff. And then
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they said I wasn't challenging enough, school and everything. So that's why they made me jump a class. And then I became calm. But before that, I was always, another way I would have described myself when I was really young, I was fighting a lot. I was always fighting.
Oh, with your classmates?
Yeah, but I was really young, like around probably up until I was 12 or something. I was always fighting.
Oh.
I don't know why. Like now I'm super calm, but back then I was wild. Yeah.
And then were you in like Shakespeare as Romeo?
Exactly. So that was during my finals, sort of. I started. That all came about because we had a politician, I forgot who it was, but we had a big politician come into our school, and at the time there was a scandal in Germany with a hacker essentially selling a CD with people who were doing committing tax evasion in Switzerland, and the hacker collected all that data on the CD and sold it to the German government. Yeah. And then a lot of people were saying, well, you're now cooperating with a criminal, but you're only doing that because you want to retrieve money and da-da-da and da-da-da. So that politician came to our school, and I asked him in front of the entire school, would you have bought that CD if it wouldn't have been people committing tax evasion, but if it would have been about corrupt politicians? Oh. And, silence. And he was like, yeah, I don't want to answer this. And a TV station happened to be there that filmed the entire interview. And it was like a panel discussion we had in our cafeteria. And then they asked to interview me afterwards. And I had like this massive fake Jesus piece on, and like I looked really like a young kid trying to be cool. But the topics I was discussing in the interview and the sort of the facts I was bringing out and etc., I was very articulate, so they were very surprised by it. And the time it aired on TV, a talent scout saw my interview. Oh. And on the back of that interview, the talent scout sort of reached out to them, got our information, contacted my mom back then if I was interested in, going into acting. They said, there's a show called Romeo and Julia, so I went for that and ended up getting the lead role.
Was it easy Romeo. For you, like acting? Did you like it?
It was the first time in my whole life I've ever done it, and like I've never had any formal training or anything, but it was cool. It was a lot of fun. It was that we learned, obviously, a lot in a very short space of time. Shooting the series and always traveling and at the same time doing school. It was very overwhelming for me. And around that time, even though I appeared to be like very confident to the outside world, still, mind you, what I just said, what I was going through when I was like 16, 17, etc. So that was right during that time. So on the inside, I was sometimes like, no, this is a lot. This is a lot. This is am I even the right choice for the role? Wouldn't have been someone else? Will formal training be better? And etc. They call it survivor's guilt. When something good happens to you, you're not even sure whether you're supposed to be there. But in retrospect, it was phenomenal. I loved it. I was on TV every day, then for a few months, and it was cool. It was really amazing.
But you always just knew that music was.
Yeah, I mean, it was tied in with music because it was a new version of Shakespeare.
Oh yeah, it was like fusion
with rap instead of just saying out the rhymes. So it tied in very nicely. But I would like to go back into acting.
Oh,
yeah, I would love to.
Oh, that'd be really
I just
cool.
haven't put my mind fully into it because I'm just focusing on the music aspect at the moment. But
And
yeah, I
then
would love to.
after that, you went to college?
Yeah, I got a, wow, you were very well informed. You did your research. Yeah. No, so after the TV series, etc., I got a partial scholarship to study law and business. And I really, really didn't like it. And after a few weeks, because I would be sitting in lectures and the same shit that I went through in school, which was I would sit in class, but I'll be writing rhymes, or I'll be drawing something, or working on a script or whatever, for like a music video. So one day I went back home and I was like, yo, somebody else could do better with this, with the funding. And this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life, especially because that sort of degree would take 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was like, man.
But why law? Is it because you have interest in politics? Is that why?
On the one hand, but also my big goal was, and still partially is, to go to Nigeria and fight corruption.
Oh.
And sounds very funny coming from someone with a gold chain and gold teeth, but it's just honest earned money. But no, I wanted to, and I said to myself, the only way to fight corruption and bad people in politics and so on is if you seize the opportunity of criminals making money through international deals by having more transparent contracts, etc., etc. That's why I chose to study law. But
how did it click to you that you wanted to, corruption was an interesting issue for you?
When I was, again, 16, I went to Nigeria for the second time. And at that time, I was just way more, my eyes were more open. I was more aware of my environment. And I just saw a lot of things that really had a huge impact on me because it's a different world out there, and we all have our struggles and things we complain about and issues that we deal with, but it's a whole different thing out there in Africa, out there in Nigeria. And we visited family. We were staying with rich family friends. We were staying with poor family friends. My dad didn't hide anything from me, And that's why I was like, yo, I want to have a positive impact on that, on my roots in that sense.
Yeah. Why did you decide to go to London?
So after I dropped out of law school, I was out and about in Germany. I went to Berlin. I was just, opening up, even for I opened up for Ace Hood with my homies. And
were you working other jobs to sustain yourself?
Yeah. I was washing dishes. I was doing this. I was doing that. For some time, I was also just really doing nothing, just apart from focusing on my music. But my mom was at some point yo, boy, you gotta go out there and do something. So yeah, I was working at cafes and all sorts of shit. And then I wanted to go abroad because I felt like it's not really progressing the way that I would want everything to progress. And one of the key steps in regards to that would be to go to a country where people understand what you're saying, because I put so much effort into my lyricism, etc. And so ideally, I would have wanted to go to America, but my mom, my stepdad, and my dad, they sort of all got together and said, if you leave the country, you have to go back into higher education, because I was the first one in my family to have the opportunity to attend, college, university, however you want to call it. But obviously, shit is way too expensive out here. So in the UK, they had that program where the government would pay for you and your student loan, and you paid back to the government, and they adjusted to your income, etc. So it was very flexible. So I went to London under the alibi of studying business, and that alibi, however, turned out to be the greatest decision probably I've made in my life, because going there just changed everything. All of a sudden, I wasn't at home anymore. I didn't have my mom looking after me, or I knew no one. I had no money, so I had to get a job while studying, and then the degree I was studying was entrepreneurship, so I had to start a company while studying and run that.
Is that the digital marketing?
Exactly. Yeah. So it was a lot, and it was really difficult, but it made me grow so much as a person, and I encourage everyone to, everyone who might be watching this, listening to this, to go for it. You know, we are the first generation that has that opportunity, at least in Europe, to go out and live and work everywhere, and you can just, you know, do whatever you want through the internet. You can teach yourself everything that you want to know. There's no excuse for not knowing something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what it was to me. So not everything we learned in the degree was really relevant to what I wanted to do, but I knew that, you know, this stuff about accounting, this stuff about law, etc., corporate strategy, that I could use that to start my own company, to start my own record label, to get funding for it, etc. And yeah, that's just what I did.
And was colors one of the first things that you got your name out there?
Exactly. Whilst I was studying, I started also towards the end mainly, started traveling more and more to Berlin because my very good friend Elijah Hook and his girlfriend at the time, they were living out there. So I just went out there to visit them and, you know, started networking and the music scene even more in Berlin. And Jana, who was at the time my manager, she knew these two guys that started a new platform. And they weren't quite sure yet what they wanted to do. All they knew was they wanted to get artists in a room, change the color of the room, and you had to perform with your microphone, with the microphone hanging down from the ceiling. And so they asked me what color I wanted, and it started out really like in a tiny, you know, all good things start in a garage. So yeah, that's what that was. And I came originally to sing like a slow R&B song. And then we were done early, and they were like, you know, is there anything else you want to do? And I said, yeah, why not? So I did the Hoochie freestyle, the freestyle on the Hoochie beat. I was obviously one of the first people to be on Colors, and when that dropped, it was like, it blew up. It was crazy. For a long time, it was like the most viewed Colors session and stuff, and it was phenomenal because all of a sudden, you had all these people and companies I'd reached out to before I went to the UK that I'd reached out to, sending them sort of the same songs that are available now. They were all knocking. They were like, who are you? What are you doing? Where are you coming from? Why don't we know about you? I was like, man,
I literally shot you.
I was in your email 2 years ago. Like, you just refused to acknowledge it up until the numbers backed it up.
Yeah.
And then Noisy approached us, and they did this big write-up about me saying London and Berlin had a child, and it's our hope for hip-hop. And you know, then additionally with that cosign, it just gave us a lot of room now to talk with labels, booking agencies, all sort of stuff. And yeah, so that color session, that Hoochie freestyles, will really put me on the map first.
And then how long after did you get the Warner Temple?
It was probably like 2 years later.
Oh.
Yeah, about 2. Oh, yeah. Wait, I have to think back. I'm really bad with time.
I'm so like chronological the way I think.
Yeah, that must have been roughly 2 years later that I signed publishing with Warner.
So you were meeting a lot of labels, and then you were just deciding.
Yeah, at some point, because we wanted to, you know, kick it off. So the label-wise, I signed with 4 Music. Which is a subsidiary of Sony in Germany, and publishing-wise, I signed with Warner.
Oh.
Exactly.
How did you realize they were the right fit?
Warner was, so we were talking with most of the publishers, but Warner was already helping us out without, you know, obviously they would expect someone in the back of the mind to get something from it.
Yeah.
But they, you know, I was in New York working with people, and they gave us a studio there. I was out here in LA, and they would try to connect us with people, and so that's why I felt like, okay, they're really supportive. They have an international infrastructure. They're not just claiming that they have one. So I felt like this was the right fit. Now, in retrospect, 1 year after the deal, you know, they're doing their thing, and the same as Sony is, but nobody will work as hard for your dream as you and your, you know, eminent environment around you, your team that you handpick. No money that you get, no big A&Rs or executives can ever do the same shit for you that you and your manager or you and your friends and you and your own PR person will achieve for you. Like, it is so important because I entered, after like signing the deals, I entered the situation with the mindset of, okay, you know, they're gonna put me there, they're gonna get this for me, they're gonna, man, I don't wanna say they ain't do shit, because they are working to their best capabilities, but you have to keep in mind, you know, they have loads of artists, people change, staff changes. So luckily I'm being sort of treated as a priority, whatever that means, but still everything that is great out there that you see happening, be it us or me being the first artist to have 2 color sessions, so the second colors, be that we just had an ad with for the World Cup, a big company took one of our songs and used it with like big football players.
Wow.
But all of that sort of stuff, that's us. That's me, that's my manager, that's our own, you know, PR guy, or our own marketing, like my own marketing people that I've brought on board within our infrastructure, our company, our collective BYS. And we're just working every day.
Yeah.
That's like everything that you see popping, there's still the hard work. You know.
Where would you say you got your style influences from?
No, that's a good question. I really like 90s stuff, so like the old, you know, the way Puffy and Biggie and Mace used to rock their shit. Pac obviously back then, but he was a lot about like, he was probably one of the first to really rock high-end European designers in the States, so I ain't yet balling like that, so I can't have the whole Versace like Pac. But yeah, you know, Pharrell, Kanye, Rocky, back then Kid Cudi, because I saw him, like I became a fan of Bape because I saw Cudi rocking Bape. And that's how it is, like I would see certain key items on certain people, and I would just, back in my teens, I would look up to them, and now I'm in the position where I can, you know, either collaborate with the brands or buy the stuff or whatever. So I just really walk into somewhere and I just, unless it is like an iconic piece that I've had my mind on since I was a teenager, it's more just, you know, I see it, I grab it, I like it. And that's what it is.
How do you say your music has changed since the early songs you wrote?
How has it changed? I think I've detached myself more and more from things that are currently happening. So when I was younger, I would like always download on that Piff the instrumental mixtapes and just rap on whatever song is hot and whatever. But the older that I got, the less I started listening to new music and more looking for music that inspires me, where I feel like, oh, okay, this is something I haven't heard in, you know, in that way. I focus more on sharing more of what is happening inside of me, which is why, for example, now this is like the first interview I've ever, you know, been talking about that I was, you know, was depressive as a teenager and yada yada, because I feel I started getting more in touch with what made me really do music. And that was listening, as I said, to Pac and Cudi and them helping me do their music through difficult times. And that's really what I want to do with my music. And apart from, you know, it's inspiring other people and hopefully opening up doors for Europe or Germany or however you want to call it as a music community, but on the international scale. But it was especially, I got back in touch with, I want to help people. And so my music became more personal, more vulnerable, more honest.
How do you say you've grown as a person since you were younger?
That's a good question, because my mom, or like just people in general, would have like an old soul in a young body, without trying to sound esoteric or something. It is definitely becoming more confident in who I am. The way I look, the things I like, you know, the fact that I'm not fully black and that I'm not fully white, but that I'm, you know, a mixture of both, and that's cool, and that I don't have to act hood to blend in with my hood friends, and I don't have to act snobby and whatever to blended with my posh or rich friends, but you know that I'm just fucking me, and that's what they love about me. That's what I learned to love myself for that. And it sounds very. These things, they are very easy, but they're not simple to achieve. You know, I think a lot of us still struggle every day, even into the late, 60s, 70 years old people. They still struggle with not being confident about maybe the way their nose look or their skin color or having too many freckles or God knows what. And my message is, love yourself.
Yeah.
That's it.
What does success look like to you?
Success is a highly trivial. What's the opposite of objective? Subjective. No. Yeah. Exactly. Term. So I feel success for me is if you do what you love to do, and you can provide for yourself and the people that you want to provide for. If your obligations and responsibilities at the end of every month can be met without you having to compromise how you invest your time. So essentially having, freedom of time. That is, I guess, when you're successful, you can invest your time however you want to invest it without looking at the clock and thinking, when can I leave this place? This is bullshit. So I feel for how my life is right now, I feel that I am, in regards to that, successful. But if I start thinking about tomorrow, and if I start looking around me and seeing, okay, some of my friends can't yet do what they want to do for a living, then my definition of success all of a sudden becomes larger, on a wider scope, and then I'm like, okay, I'm not fully successful yet because I can't provide for everyone that I have to provide for, in my opinion.
What does love mean to you?
Love, it depends on what kind of love we're talking about.
Up to you. Family, friends, relationships.
I think love it sounds so cliche, but it's probably one of the most important things and greatest gifts that we carry. And love is something that we need more of, that we need to share more of. And I try to give love through my music, through what I do, through having this conversation. I don't think that we always realize how important love is up until the moment where we don't feel love.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
What's love in your opinion?
Feeling like I can totally be myself and they understand me. Could be with my parents, not ever putting on a fake face with my friends and just yeah, I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Last question. What do you want to be remembered for?
What do I want to be remembered for? I have this saying, I'd rather be a legend to 10 people than a star to 1,000. Which means I'd rather positively impact the life of only 10 people than to be some weird idol that people can identify with on a large scale. I want to, if you remember me for being the one that made you chase your dream, try out something you were afraid of, telling someone that you secretly love that you love that person. If I'm the one who makes you, call your mom now and tell her, yo, Mom, I love you, then I'm happy.
Yeah, I love this. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Bye.